You're told to let go of desire. You're told it's the root of suffering. But here's the uncomfortable truth. You're here watching this video because you desired to understand. You started meditating because you desired peace. You read scriptures because you desired clarity. You wanted to end suffering, and that is a desire. So the question is not whether you desire. The question is, can that desire free you? I'm silent flame. And this is the deepest contradiction in all of Buddhism. Can the fire of craving become the light of awakening? Or must all desire, even the desire for truth, be extinguished? Three key terms: tanha, Pali; trasna, Sanskrit, literal meaning thirst; implication, obsessive craving, often sensual or egoic, associated with dukkha; the second noble truth, chanda, meaning directed intention, motivation, can be wholesome or unwholesome depending on context, appears in meditation and ethical striving, upadana, meaning clinging, grasping, root of karmic rebirth and suffering, tied to identity, views, rituals, and sensuality. So when the Buddha says desire is the cause of suffering, he's referring to tanha, not all longing. This distinction is everything, because some forms of desire, like chanda, are actually praised. So not all desire is bad. Exactly. There is a difference between craving chocolate cake at midnight and wanting to overcome greed, hatred, and delusion. The first enslaves, the second points to freedom. So the real question isn't, is desire bad? It's, what kind of desire is this? Where is it coming from? And where does it lead? Let's dig deeper. If Buddhism says eliminate desire, then isn't the desire to eliminate desire itself a desire? This is the ancient koan, and if you've ever practiced seriously, you've felt it burn. The loop of desire, suppressing desire. Many practitioners, especially in the beginning, try to crush their cravings. They push away thoughts. They deny feelings. They scold their own mind. But what is driving that? A subtle desire. I want peace. I want to be free of want. I want to transcend this. And so the ego rebrands itself as the spiritual seeker. Realization. You don't kill desire. You see it through. The Buddha didn't say, destroy all longing with force. He said, understand it, observe it, let it burn itself out in the light of awareness. Desire is like a match. If you hold it blindly, it burns you. If you observe it, it burns itself. One desire to burn all desires. Here's the mystery at the center of the path. Can one desire, the longing for awakening, be so pure, so clear that it consumes all others? And when it finishes its work, it too is released. Just like a raft that carries you across a river, you don't strap it to your back once you've crossed. Let's begin with the classical view, the foundational school, Theravāda. In the second noble truth, the Buddha says, it is craving, tanha, that leads to renewal of being, accompanied by delight and lust, seeking delight here and there. There are three kinds of tanha described: kama tanha, craving for sense pleasures; bhava tanha, craving for existence; vibhava tanha, craving for non-existence or annihilation. These aren't just outer desires. They are deep psychological movements, grasping at experience, identity, permanence. Theravāda strategy: replace tanha with chanda. Theravāda does not say, stop all wanting. It says, abandon the kinds of wanting that bind you and cultivate the kind that leads to release. So chanda, a wholesome aspiration, is actually essential to the path. You want to meditate. You want to develop virtue. You want to know suffering and end it. That's chanda, and without it, you'd never move. Now we move into Mahayana. Here, the concept of desire takes on an even more paradoxical shape, because the Mahayana ideal is the bodhisattva. the being who vows to liberate all sentient beings, even postponing their own final enlightenment if necessary. That vow is fueled by longing, but it is a transformed longing. Bodhicitta, the highest desire. The bodhisattva path is born from bodhicitta, the mind of awakening, infused with compassion. It is a wish, a desire, a burning intention. May I awaken for the sake of all beings. And that desire is not seen as tanha, it is seen as the vehicle of liberation, the fire that purifies itself. The Mahayana texts speak of using the momentum of aspiration to overcome egoic grasping. It's like redirecting a river. Instead of blocking the flow, you change its course. And eventually, when compassion is perfected, the desire to awaken becomes the awakened activity itself. Now we go even deeper to the tantric paths. In Vajrayāna, desire is not just tolerated, it is used. The practitioner visualizes gods and goddesses, engages with fierce energies, works with the body, speech, and mind simultaneously, not to indulge desire, but to recognize its true nature. Desire is energy, not the enemy. According to tantric teachings, desire becomes suffering when we cling to its object, but the energy itself, raw, potent, vital, can be harnessed. This is not metaphorical. Some Vajrayāna practices involve working directly with sexual energy, wrathful emotion, and mental projection. The goal, to see that all phenomena, including desire, are expressions of the clear light mind and can be transmuted into wisdom. The warning, but this path is dangerous without deep realization and ethical grounding, because when ego uses desire to justify pleasure, it corrupts the Dharma. So the tantric path is not about indulgence. It's about total awareness in the midst of intensity. Zen doesn't argue with desire, it stares through it. Zen doesn't say, desire will lead you to enlightenment, nor does it say, crush your desire. It simply asks, who desires? And if you look, what do you find? Just sitting, no goal. In Soto Zen, the core practice is shikantaza, just sitting, no object, no mantra, no goal. You don't meditate to become calm. You don't meditate to become enlightened. You just sit fully. And in that total surrender, what you were chasing starts to dissolve. Desire as mental weather. In Zen, thoughts and desires are like clouds. They come, they go, but the sky doesn't cling to them. The trick isn't to fight desire. It's to stop being tricked into thinking it defines you. The act of just sitting is an act of radical non-participation in the endless swirl of wanting. Dzogchen, the pinnacle teaching of the Nyingma tradition, takes a similar but even more refined view. Here, the goal is to recognize the nature of mind, which is always present, luminous, and untouched. Desire arises, so does wind, so does sunlight, so does memory. You don't chase it. You don't suppress it, you rest as the space in which it happens. The mirror never gets dirty. Desire doesn't stain awareness. It stains the one who believes they are the thinker. But when you look directly at mind, without distraction, without concept, you find that desire has no roots. It arises and it melts, not suppressing, not indulging, just seeing. This is non-meditation. Not effort, not trying, just naked recognition. And in that recognition, desire loses its stickiness. Modern secular mindfulness often avoids the term desire, too religious, too moral, but it reappears under new labels: attachment, compulsive behavior, unconscious reactivity. And the solution it offers: awareness, gentle attention, allowing. No suppression, no indulgence, just noticing the impulse and letting it pass. Neuroscience agrees. The brain's craving system lights up in milliseconds, but mindfulness creates a pause, space between stimulus and response. And in that space, new patterns are born. The desire may not be gone, but your relationship to it has changed. Before we judge desire as spiritual failure, we need to understand its biological origin. Desire is not a sin, it is a survival function. Dopamine, the neurotransmitter of pursuit, is wired into our brains. It evolved to make us seek food, shelter, connection, safety. But in the modern world, this system has been hijacked by sugar, screens, praise, power. You don't choose to desire, you were born to. Desire is a loop, not a choice. You see an image, the brain predicts pleasure, dopamine spikes, craving arises, behavior follows. This is not freedom, it's conditioning. But Buddhism offers the tool that biology forgot: awareness, the ability to see the loop and step out of it. Not all desire is about pleasure. Some desire is a reaction to pain. If you were neglected, you may crave attention. If you were abused, you may seek safety and control. If you were shamed, you may desire approval. These are not evil desires. They are scars searching for soothing. And when spiritual traditions say desire is the enemy, many people internalize that to mean I am broken. From self judgment to self understanding. But Buddhism doesn't say shame your cravings, it says understand them. When you see that desire is the mind's way of avoiding pain, you don't hate the desire. You hold it, you investigate it, you let it unravel itself. Now let's talk about modern life, because in today's world, desire isn't just present, it's engineered. The attention economy is built on desire. Billions of dollars go into making you want, scroll, click, buy, chase. Social media trains your mind to crave validation. Advertising trains your brain to confuse longing with identity. You are taught you are what you want, but the Dharma says you are what watches the wanting. Escaping the algorithm of craving, to be free today, doesn't just mean escaping samsara, it means deprogramming your nervous system. And meditation is not about removing desire, it's about refusing to feed it unconsciously. To sit still in a world screaming, you must chase this now, is the first act of rebellion. You don't have to fight your desires, you have to see them clearly. And when you see them fully, they start to change on their own. This is the magic of mindfulness, not to control the mind like a tyrant, but to illuminate it like the sun. Desire thrives in darkness, in habit, in hurry, in unconsciousness. But when light touches it, you realize this desire isn't eternal. It isn't you. It's just a wave, rising and passing, not fighting, not feeding, just seeing. A thought says, I need this. The body tenses, the breath shortens, the mind leans forward. But you pause, you see it, and in that moment, a little space opens, and in that space, freedom begins. Let's be honest, you're not going to stop wanting, but you can shift what you want. Instead of craving stimulation, you can begin to long for stillness. Instead of chasing ego affirmation, you can begin to move toward inner honesty. The mind needs something to move toward, so give it something true. The path of sublimation. This is not repression, this is transformation. You don't kill desire, you purify its aim. Instead of desiring to be someone, you desire to see through the illusion of anyone. Instead of wanting to possess, you want to let go. That shift in trajectory is the beginning of the path. But there's a danger here, because even noble longing can become ego in disguise. The desire to be awakened can become a new identity and the most subtle form of craving. Look how advanced I am. Look how humble I appear. Look how enlightened I might be soon. This is spiritual materialism, and it's more dangerous than craving chocolate, the mirror of self-honesty. That's why true practice demands radical inner honesty. You must question the part of you that wants to be special, that wants to win awakening, because awakening doesn't happen to a self. It happens when the idea of self falls away. Desire can lead you to the gate, but it can't walk you through. It gives you momentum. It pulls you toward practice. It opens the inquiry. Is there more than this life of craving? But eventually, you must let go of even that desire, like the raft left behind once you've crossed the river. Right intention, the seed of release. The Buddha didn't say, have no will. He said, right intention. That's not suppression, that's alignment. The kind of desire that brings peace is the kind that seeks no reward, the kind that acts from clarity, not lack. And when that seed is planted, liberation is not far. Let's return to the Buddha himself, because his story tells us everything. After awakening under the Bodhi tree, the Buddha could have stayed in silence, free, done, untouched. But he looked again and saw beings with dust in their eyes. And from that seeing arose a profound wish. May I share this? That was desire, not craving, but pure compassionate impulse, without self, without agenda, the action of awakened desire. This is the desire that doesn't need results, that doesn't cling to being a teacher, that doesn't want a reward. It is simply what arises when ego ends and compassion remains. Not, I want to help, but helping is what's happening. Milarepa was a murderer, driven by rage and revenge. He killed dozens with black magic. But later, in guilt and despair, he turned his energy toward Dharma. His longing was no longer to destroy, but to be purified. He found a teacher, Marpa, and underwent brutal hardship, building a tower, tearing it down, endless trials, with no explanation. And still, he stayed. Why? Because his desire had changed. The same fire, redirected, Milarepa's fire didn't vanish, it was transformed. He became one of Tibet's greatest yogis, living in caves, meditating in snow, singing songs of realization. His desire didn't disappear. It became devotion, clarity, freedom. Shantideva was a monk mocked by his peers. They thought he was lazy, a joke. One day, they asked him to give a Dharma talk to expose his ignorance. Instead, he delivered the Bodhicāryavatara, a masterpiece of Mahayana wisdom. And in it, he said, may I become food for the hungry, a boat for those who wish to cross, a lamp for those in darkness. No self, just vow. Shantideva had no interest in fame, no self-centered longing, only the vow to serve. And that vow, that wish, is desire without self. Not I will become great, but may suffering end. And if this body can help, let it. Thich Nhat Hanh. He didn't seek to be famous. He just kept walking, breathing, teaching, offering peace, because that was his nature. Pema Chodron, she speaks of desire not as enemy, but as the beginning of inquiry. Lean into discomfort, she says. See what's behind it. It's never what you think it is. Deepa Ma, after tremendous personal loss, her child, her husband, she turned to meditation not to escape, but to understand. Her longing wasn't to end pain. It was to meet it with stillness and love. Now we must face the question head on. Can desire really lead to awakening? The answer is, it depends which desire. If it's tanha, craving based on lack, fear, ego, then no, it leads to clinging, samsara, more suffering. But if it's chanda, clear intention, rooted in compassion and wisdom, then yes, it opens the gate. But the path is narrow, because even noble desire can turn into subtle attachment. Right desire dies as it fulfills its work. The only desire that leads to freedom is the one willing to die along the way, like a candle that burns itself down to bring light. You want to awaken, you practice, you let go, and one day you no longer want to awaken. You just are present, silent, aware. This is the turning point, to hold longing without becoming the one who longs. To say, may I awaken, not because I will gain, but because clarity wants to flower through this body, this mind. It is desire without ego, longing without self importance, direction without destination, the selfless flame. When the self drops away, but the wish remains, that is Bodhicitta. It says, let me walk the path, even if no one sees me, even if I never finish it, even if I am not real. That is the most powerful desire because it needs nothing for itself. Some think that to be a real practitioner, you must instantly drop all desire. But that's not how the mind works, nor how the Dharma works. The Buddha didn't ask for perfection, he asked for effort in the right direction. You begin where you are, desire and all. And if your longing is sincere and your attention steady, it will refine itself. You will see the cracks in your own thirst, and in time it lets go of itself. When all striving falls away, when no one is trying to get anywhere, what remains? Not nothing, but something deeper than wanting. Silence, peace, clarity without force. Life continues. Acts happen. Words are spoken, but without friction. The fire no longer burns to possess. It burns because that's what fire does. If the desire for enlightenment leads to enlightenment, who exactly arrives? And that's the final paradox. The one who longed for freedom is not the one who is free. The person dissolves, the seeking ends, the flame consumes the wick. And what remains is not the achievement of a self, but the absence of one. The desire that ends desire. Yes, desire can lead to enlightenment, but only the kind of desire that dies along the way, the kind that is willing to disappear, the kind that becomes love instead of lack. In the end, you do not gain freedom. You forget what it was you thought you lacked, and that forgetting is release.